You just started playing Oxygen Not Included for the first time, and after an hour or two of playing, your colony did not survive, and you're left trying to figure out what went wrong with very little direction from the game. I have 10 tips for new players that will help you navigate the harsh environments of your asteroid. I won't regurgitate what the game already tells you in the tooltips. These will be 10 very easy to implement elements that the game does not tell you and will help your colony survive into the mid-game phase. Tip number 1. Digging and heat. When you start digging out your asteroid, dig 4 blocks high at all times, and as far as you can see, until you reach the hot areas of your base. While these slightly higher temperatures are not colony killers themselves, the combination of heat generated within your base from ranching and machinery eventually will be, so it is important to limit the sources which produce heat as much as possible. Digging out 4 tiles high allows your duplicants to be as efficient as possible in one complete pass-through of digging, because 4 tiles is the highest that they can reach. It is also worth noting that all the buildings you research will be a maximum of 4 tiles high, so you might as well be prepared in this way. Tip number 2. Airflow and liquid locks. Only one type of solid, liquid, or a gas can occupy any given tile at any time. This means that even a single drop of liquid in any tile will not allow any gases to pass through that tile, as you can see here in this demonstration. This one tile of oxygen is being blocked by this one tile of water. The oxygen cannot pass through, and the water cannot take its place. Keeping your base as open as possible will allow generators to work efficiently, and otherwise they will easily become overpressured if there is not enough airflow, as is the case of this oxygen diffuser. However, you may also want to limit airflow with liquid locks. This game mechanic is essential to learn early on, as it will be used all the way up until the endgame. Nasty gases such as this chlorine gas will flow into your base without stopping it. To prevent this from happening, you'll want to create a liquid lock before you start digging out into different biomes. There are very different types, but I'm going to show you the easiest one to build in my opinion. You'll want to create a small pit in a triangle shape as you see on the screen and fill it with water. You can use more advanced liquids later on, but water works just fine for your first liquid lock. You'll need a pitcher pump and a bottle emptier. Simply fill up this pit with water as you see here, and now you will have a liquid lock. You are free to explore the outside of your base in the harsher environments of the asteroid, without polluted gases entering your base. As you can see here, this chlorine is unable to pass through into my base because the liquid is blocking it from doing so. When you start on the basic Terra asteroid, your immediate surrounding of the printing pod will be relatively safe to dig out. However, as you venture farther out, you will notice that material you are digging starts to change color. This is called the swamp biome. Digging out solids like slime will emit polluted oxygen into the surrounding environment. While this isn't seriously harmful in small quantities, having it flow directly into your base will make your dupes sick in the form of slime lung, which lowers their athletic stat and lowers their productivity, causing them to sneeze and cough, which will spread more germs within your base. As you can see, this liquid lock is preventing the slime lung and the germs from entering my base. It's a very simple method to help you dig out farther outside of your starting location without nasty gases like polluted oxygen, or worse, entering your main base. Tip number 3. Dealing with carbon dioxide. So you've followed your on-screen prompts and started researching. You've probably built the coal generator by now. This is great. Now you don't have to have your dupes running on the hamster wheel for you to produce power. However, you may not realize until it's too late, but the coal generator will not only emit heat, but will also emit CO2 into your base. As CO2 collects at the bottom, it will make it difficult or impossible for your duplicants to work efficiently. They will only be able to work as long as they can hold their breath, at which point they will climb as high as they can to get a breath of fresh air. So how do we deal with this? The first is to simply keep digging lower. As you can see, carbon dioxide is heavier than air, and it will fall to the bottom of your base. If you continue digging lower, you don't have to deal with the carbon dioxide until a later time. However, the second option is to create a liquid lock and put your coal generators behind the liquid lock, sealing the room shut so the carbon dioxide does not leak out into the rest of your base. However, there is a third way to deal with the carbon dioxide buildup, and that is venting it out into space. You'll need to dig all the way up to space, and then build a gas pipe that reaches vacuum where the carbon dioxide will be instantly deleted. This method is resource intensive and is only recommended if you have a stable form of power. This is also a good time to learn a little bit of automation. So with that, let's go into tip number 4. Automation can be very daunting, but let's start with something very simple. We have a room full of CO2 where our coal generators are working. We want to get rid of the CO2, so we're going to build an atmo sensor. If we have this pump running 100% of the time, it will eventually move small packets of oxygen, but it will still use the same amount of power as if you're moving full packets. So we can control this using an atmo sensor. The setup for this is very easy. However, you will need to build a rock crusher to build refined metal. Once you have your refined metal, build your atmo sensor and connect it with an automation wire to your gas pump. You can set the atmo sensor to turn on when there is only 1,000 grams or more of some type of gas in this room. Once these coal generators fill up this room with CO2 that is over 1,000 grams of pressure, this pump will turn on and vent the carbon dioxide. Similarly, if you have this gas pump at the bottom of your base to vent out the carbon dioxide, it will eventually start venting out precious oxygen, and you don't want that. So you can build a gas element sensor. Once you have it built and connected to your gas pump via an automation cable, simply select to vent only carbon dioxide. Once there's enough carbon dioxide around the sensor, it will turn the pump on, and it will only vent out carbon dioxide if you put it above the pump. You can get far more advanced and have your oxygen filtered through this pipe, but this is the easiest and most basic setup for venting your carbon dioxide out of your base. Tip number 5, morale. Your duplicants will learn skills as they work in your base and level up. You'll be prompted by the printing pod to select skills periodically throughout your playthrough for your duplicants. You'll notice during this time that your duplicants have 2 bars. One is their morale currently, and the other is how much they expect to have based on the amount of skills they've learned. You can hover over these bars to get a complete rundown of everything that is affecting the morale of your dupes. This is very important, especially as you continue to grow your colony. Keeping your duplicants' morale high by building dedicated rooms around your base is essential. The easiest is the barracks, which will give your dupes a +1 morale boost. Put your duplicants' cot beds into a closed-off area with a door. This creates a room called the barracks. You can see the requirement for every room that's available by hovering over the tooltips. The barracks must be a minimum of 12 tiles in size and a maximum of up to 64 tiles in size. You can simply drag your dig tool to find out exactly what size your room is currently, or how big you need to build it. The rooms can also extend into any direction. You do not need to have it into a 4x16 configuration as you see here. They can also extend vertically, as long as they are closed off and you meet the requirements. Another very simple room to build early on to improve your morale is the Great Hall. As you can see, this gives a +6 morale boost. It gives your duplicants a place to sit and eat while they're on their break. Third, and probably most helpful to make in the early game, is a washroom. Washrooms give +2 morale boost and allow a sanitary environment for your duplicants to wash their hands and do their business whenever they need to. Each room has a criteria that must be met, so double check what is conflicting if you're not getting the room results you're expecting. Now, when you have the washroom set up, you will need to deal with polluted water, as it will emit polluted oxygen like we talked about earlier. And this is tip number 6, dealing with waste. Once you have your washroom set up, you'll notice that there is an intake and an output pipe for each of your sinks and lavatories. This is pretty self-explanatory, but what is not self-explanatory is what happens to this waste. Now, there are many advanced ways to deal with the waste coming from your washrooms, but for a beginner, the easiest and most convenient method is to create a pit somewhere near the washrooms that the waste can flow into, as is the case here. Before you close off this pit, make sure you put a liquid pump inside with pre-built wiring and pre-built plumbing. Then seal it off completely to stop the polluted oxygen from entering your base. Depending on how big you make this pit, you'll be able to forget about it for possibly hundreds of cycles before it becomes full. The purpose of putting the pump inside preemptively is to be able to move the polluted water that accumulates without infecting the rest of your base by opening up the top and allowing the polluted oxygen to flow out. You can also deal with the waste by feeding the polluted water directly into the plants that consume it, as is the case here with the thimbleweed. Thimbleweed seeds can be found early on, and they are very important as they can be harvested for reed fiber, which you will need during the mid-game to build Atmo suits. There are other ways to deal with this waste as well, but I think these two are the most beginner-friendly. Another easy way to deal with waste is to not have waste at all, by not taking so many duplicants from the printing pod. The printing pod is like a new player trap. Every duplicant that you take from the pod will consume oxygen that you need to renew, consume more food that you need to grow, and produce more waste that you need to deal with. Keep this in mind and don't be afraid to pass up on duplicants when they are available from the printing pod. In fact, unless you desperately need more workers, I would suggest you keep waiting until you get duplicants with traits that you want or need to fill special roles within your colony. Personally, I will take a 4th duplicant as soon as they are available from the pod. Then I will take a 5th and a 6th once I know I can grow the crops to feed them, and my power seems stable enough. By cycle 50, I may have 6 or 8 duplicants, depending on the progress I'm making with stabilizing my base. By cycle 100, I may have 7 to 10 duplicants. And generally, I'll never finish the game with more than 15. There's definitely no black and white chart to show when you should take a duplicant. That's why my suggestion is to only take the 6th and beyond when you get one with a specialized skill that you desperately need for your base. Tip number 8, choosing the right duplicants from the printing pod or when you start your game. One could argue that these are the most important aspects of any colony, but this guide is not meant to maximize efficiency or optimization. So we're not going to go through every single trait that a duplicant can have. I'm just going to tell you the ones to stay away from, and do not take these duplicants under any circumstance. You never want to take a duplicant that will consume more air or consume more food than other duplicants. This is a major tax on your colony, as it is the equivalent of having an extra duplicant living in your base that is not contributing. To put that into perspective, if you have 2 identical duplicants with these negative traits, you're essentially feeding or producing air for a duplicant that does not exist. These traits could include bottomless stomach, where a duplicant will have to eat more calories per cycle. Another one is mouth breather, a duplicant that will consume more oxygen. Also, never take a duplicant that will fall asleep periodically. You don't want them slacking on the job and taking a nap when something important needs to be done. There are less desirable traits, such as Steve here, who has allergies and is allergic to floral scent, or Turner, who requires light to sleep. I personally would skip on these duplicants unless their positive trait counterbalances these negative impacts that they will have. These are more personal annoyances for me to deal with, so I'll always consider not taking these duplicants, or only taking them if they have a very good positive trait. The absolute best practice is to take duplicants who cannot do certain tasks that are very niche in your base, such as researching, cooking, or doctoring. These are very niche roles and you do not need your entire colony to know how to cook. So, in a sense, these duplicants have basically no negative traits, because someone else can do the cooking in your base. It doesn't have to be Lindsay. Also, duplicants that are building impaired and cannot build as quickly, or have noodle arms and have decreased strength, are also ones that you should stay away from. Unless they will be filling very niche roles such as cooking, farming, ranching, or researching, where building and strength are not necessarily needed. These tasks such as farming, ranching, and cooking are practically full-time jobs within a colony, so it doesn't matter if they cannot dig or construct as quickly as other duplicants. Tip number 9. Get off the Mush Bar as soon as possible as a source of food. If you followed the on-screen prompts, you are likely feeding your dupes Mush Bars or lice loaves. These repulsive entrees do not give any morale boost to your duplicants, and they can have adverse effects. For example, Mush Bars are made with food poisoning germs, which can make your duplicants sick. Better foods that are cooked on the electric grill will give your duplicants a morale boost, so it is essential to get off Mush Bars as soon as possible. If you can, consider skipping the microbe musher entirely, and rushing farm tiles or hydroponic tiles for cooking proper foods. We talked about morale earlier, why it's so important, and how to raise it with buildings and rooms. And another very easy way is by giving your duplicants good quality food. If you rush Bristle Blossoms from the start of your game, you will have a quality food source that you can use all the way up until late game, especially when you start using the gas range. For this, you'll need to research hydroponic farms. You'll need running water through a liquid pump, lighting, which means you'll also need stable power, and someone in your colony who can farm, and a range where you'll be able to cook. Your colony will also need the grill cooking skill in order to use the electric grill. Bristle blossoms are incredibly easy to maintain with one exception, and that is heat, which we covered briefly earlier. They will only grow between 10 and 30 degrees Celsius, so you must be careful to keep your base at proper temperatures for this crop to grow. Now that we've gotten this far, you can see how everything starts to tie in together. Too much heat and you can't grow food, and heat is produced from the electricity that you need for your light bulb, and the water pump to keep the crop growing. Which brings us to tip number 10. Newton's third law. Remember being introduced to Newton's third law in grade school? Well, this is going to apply everywhere and oxygen not included. For every action that you make for your colony, there is an equal and opposite reaction. For example, for every duplicant you take on, you will need to produce more oxygen and more food. More food means producing more power, which depletes your materials that produce your power quicker, such as coal. This also means depleting your reservoir of whatever your food is that you need to survive. If it's bristle blossoms, it means you're depleting your water quicker. If it's ranching, it means you're depleting solid materials quicker. Producing more oxygen means you'll run out of algae quicker and your colony will be dead. It means making the transition to electrolyzers sooner rather than later. More power also means more heat. More heat means your plants will die quicker. It means eventually having to start investing into more energy just to cool your base down. And more energy means producing even more power. You get the idea. It's a never-ending loop of building your infrastructure just to support the infrastructure that you already have. It's definitely not impossible to get full sustainability. You will eventually discover geysers and vents throughout the map that will give you free resources to keep your duplicants alive forever if you manage it correctly and don't overlook anything. These will of course require much more advanced building and advanced knowledge of game mechanics to tame and use correctly, which will be covered in another video. So if you've made it this far, thanks for watching. I hope that these tips will help you build a successful colony and oxygen not included. Let me know in the comments if you're a new player, and you have learned something new in this video, or if you have any questions. Until next time, I'm Ethan, and I'll see you later.